Welcome, Gems. Welcome to Lifestyle Zara. So, in today's video, we're going to discuss a man of many faces.
At first, a single investigator worked the case full-time. Now, several people are involved. The pressure to catch this man has been mounting.
White male, 6 feet tall, weighing 185 pounds.
Tying up husbands or male companions.
She was bound. He raped her.
When it happened in 1980, it was a murder in a small town. It was a sensational, god-awful murder in a small town.
Lyman Smith was a 43-year-old attorney about to be appointed as state judge by California Governor Jerry Brown. His wife, Charlene Smith, was a 33-year-old interior decorator. They were found in their bedroom, bound and bludgeoned to death with a log from the fireplace. Charlene had also been raped.
There was a lot of reason why you would think that someone they knew did this, and it had a lot of feeling and emotion behind it.
Lyman Smith's daughter, Jennifer Carroll, had just graduated from high school.
I didn't necessarily believe I would be next on his list, but I did have a fear that there could still be somebody out there, and that I knew that he watched and that he wasn't past catching up with prior victims. That was part of his MO, was to call people from the past or to be basically a terrorist.
Now, I like to start with a little bit of history for Joseph deAngelo. As I've been doing my research, some of the reports I've come upon stated he dealt with a lot of different traumatic experiences growing up. This does not excuse him becoming a terrorist as he got older, but he did experience some pretty horrible things in his youth. As a kid, it was said that his father was very abusive. It was also in some places noted that his mother was abusive as well. Between the two of them, it was said that Joseph received most of the abuse. He did have two other siblings. He had a younger sister and an older brother, or a brother. I'm not sure if he was older. In any case, his father was in the military, and he served some time in Germany when the kids were with him. During this time that he was in Germany, it was said by Joseph deAngelo's nephew. Okay, I know this is a lot of, just bear with me because it's a lot of information and a lot of people, a lot of players involved in this particular case. His sister, Joseph's sister name was Constance, and she, at the age of 7 or 8, was raped by two airmen in Germany when they were stationed over there with their parents. So in some abandoned warehouse, deAngelo witnessed his sister being raped. As horrible as that is, I'm not sure. I wondered if this was, I'm sure this traumatized him in some way and impacted his decisions later on in life. I'm not sure if he was just one of those individuals that was born innately to kill and do all these, just to put terror on people. But I'm sure something as traumatizing as witnessing two men do this to your sister at the age of, it was said that he was about 10 at the time. Could you even imagine? I couldn't imagine. So this was when he was in Germany with his parents. Sometime later, the mom and the father split up. The mom left and remarried, and Joseph's father moved on to Korea. Now, here's something really creepy, a creepy fact, or something that was said. I'm not sure how true it is, but upon doing hours and hours of research, like I really had to be careful looking up and researching some of this case because it is disturbing, and a person in their right mind would cause nightmares. It would cause nightmares. So, in any case, his father, it was said, moved to Korea, remarried, and had 3 more kids by his new wife. And he named them the exact same thing as his 3 kids were named in his previous marriage. How creepy is that? Creepy. But that's not even the icing on the cake for this case, because he was into some horrific acts. Okay, so known as all these different names between the time period of 1973, sometime in the 1970s throughout the 80s. So 1973, between 1973 and 1986. In 1973, like in the early 1970s, there were a lot of talk about a cat burglar that was creeping into people's homes and ransacking their home. Sometimes he would go in while the family was home and sleep in their beds. And sometimes he would go when no one was home and then come back after he unlocked windows or left them open, or just pretty much set the stage so that he could come back later and commit these particular crimes on these people. So during this time, he was just coming in, and he would take things like photos, nude photos of young women. He would kill people, dogs, and it was said that he actually beat some of their dogs to death. He would unplug like their air furnace in order for it to be very silent when he did return and commit his attacks on them. He would ransack their rooms. He would just destroy the home or have shaving cream and spread it across the entire house. Now, in the summer of 1976, there were reports of a series of rapes that began occurring. The homes in the area were still being ransacked, and he began actually raping young girls. In July of 76, he reportedly, I won't go into the details of this particular situation, but he broke into the home of 2 young girls, one 15 and one 16, and he sexually the 15-year-old, and then he stayed in the home for some time. The young girls were bound inside of the home where they could hear him in the kitchen ransacking things, eating. It was said that he would even sometimes stay in the home going through, the victims could actually hear him going through their personal belongings and going through their kitchen and preparing himself food while he did these crimes. So during this time, he broke into this home of these young girls and managed to get away with that as well. Now, later on in before this, it was said that this was probably one of his first victims that he actually began to murder. So this is how his names were beginning to change, because he didn't have a he didn't have a particular style or method of harming people, harming his victims. He was all over the place when it came to his different MOs. So the first person that they think was his first murder victim, was a man by the name of Claude Sneeling. He was attempting to defend his teenage daughter from being kidnapped in the middle of the night. The young girl was awakened by some crazy psycho man in a mask attempting to kidnap her. He basically told her not to make a sound or he would hurt everyone in the home and hurt her. And as he attempted to get her outside the home, the father heard the struggle, and he was awakened and attempted to, well, he did stop him in the act, but he was shot during this time and ended up dying, saving his daughter. So his daughter was not kidnapped, thank God, but the father was shot, and he did end up passing away. So from there, he began to... So from there, he was all over the place during this time, his terror reign. He was there ransacking homes. He was kidnapping and murdering young girls. And then he began to kidnap or begin to rape young women while their partner was home, their husband or their spouse and significant other was there. It was said that there was like a town hall meeting, and they were brought there to discuss all of these rapes and killings that was happening in the area. And a young man stood up and said that all of these, because up to this time he was only attacking young women, victimless young women, young girls, and women, single women at home alone. And he would sneak into their home and basically prepare his for when he came back to break into their homes. So at this time, at the town hall meeting, it was said that a young man stood up and said he would not be doing this if men were present, and if he was present, this man would not be doing these horrible things to these women. And months later, that very same man was attacked in his home with his spouse or girlfriend at the time. Whew. Unbelievable. Okay, so after his crimes turned into murders, he began seeking out couples. He ended up getting into... A couple was walking their dog, and he attacked them, and the guy fought back. And I guess because maybe the injuries that he sustained during that altercation, or maybe it was close to him actually getting caught or hurt, seriously injured, he decided that wasn't a good look for him to be attacking couples. But he did attack couples for a very long period of time. Okay? Now, all of these crimes that he was committing, like a lot of them initially was in the Bay Area, and then they spread out into Northern California. And the police were basically baffled because each time they were on the brink of catching him, they just simply could not. It was one attack they believe was one of his last attacks after he attacked numerous couples in the Sacramento area. The last known attack, and granted, he could have so many other victims out there that he could have killed or raped. There could be victims that have never came forward. There could be victims that he murdered and we would never know. But the amount, when he was finally caught, because yes, he was caught, thank goodness, but the amount of victims, even when he was caught, is unbelievable. And the fact that he escaped being caught for so long, he escaped capture for over 40 years. How is this possible? How was he able to manipulate people? Was he really that good to where the police just could not catch him? He would even return sometimes to back to crimes he'd committed prior. So let's say he'd go in and kidnap and rape someone, or ransack their home and steal their stuff, because he was stealing things like coins and piggy banks at first, and then he would steal things like their personal belongings, like their panties or their photos of them. And it was times where he would go back and break into the very same homes that he did before and try to assault people that he assaulted in the past. He was that cocky and that sure that he would not get caught. In reading over this case, I was wondering if there were times where he wanted to get caught. But then I was reading some places where he actually called his victims after the fact and taunted them. He would call and say, "I'm going to kill you," in such a creepy voice. And then he would call the police department and basically tell them how dumb and stupid they were for not being able to catch him. So a part of me was curious as to if he wanted to be caught. And then another part of me is like, I think it seems like he felt he was too smart to be caught, and that he would go to his grave with this knowledge that he was in fact the Golden State Killer, and that he would literally get away with it. He was 72 years old when they figured out who the possible suspect could be. He was 72 years old. He was committing these crimes in the 70s and the 80s, and it was not until 2018 where they were able to combine DNA from his previous crime spree and narrow down all suspects to him. Now, DNA technology was not that involved during the 70s and the 80s. So, of course, he's thinking there's no way. He's thinking he would not be caught. He's thinking he's going to get away with it. But eventually, that DNA technology was available, and it was more sophisticated, and they were able to put some stuff together, and they were able to think against the grain and try to figure out ways to catch this guy. They were beginning to think that he possibly had military background because he just kept eluding being caught. Then they were wondering whether or not if he was a police officer, because each time they were so close to getting a clue, not catching him, but getting a clue as to who he was, they just nothing transpired from it. So one of the couples that he attacked, one of the last known attacks, he went after a young woman named Janelle Lisa Cruz. And the crazy thing is, after he attacked her, he went back later and revisited her. The young lady was, I'm so happy she was aware after the attack and kept on her P's and Q's, because she ended up noticing some footprints near her window one day, and she alerted the police. So the authorities came out and they set up a sting where they had 2 officers, around her premises, just waiting for, hopefully he would come, attempt to be stupid enough to come back again. And sure enough, he did. He came back and did not know. One officer was like hiding across the streets on the lookout, and the other officer was inside of her garage. And he crept up, did not see the officer in the garage, and the officer was able to watch him and follow him as he went to try to enter this woman's house again. As he was doing so, the officer, shined his light on him and basically stopped him red-handed. And as he shined his light on him, he could be heard saying, "Please don't hurt me. Please don't hurt me," just pleading with him to not hurt him, like the numerous ways he did all his victims and the people that survived him. Okay. Yes, okay. So as the officer shining the light in his face, because this is actually one of the things that he would do to his victims when he broke into their home, they would be awakened to him shining his light in their face. Just imagine just sleep in your home, comfortable, cozy, and in the middle of the night, 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., in the brightness of the morning, to have some weirdo in your home standing over you and your partner, shining this bright behind light in your face, telling you to tie up your husband so that he can do whatever the heck he feels like he wants to do to you. He would also, after he has the wife tie up the husband, he would place dishes on the husband's back and proceed to take the wife into the other room where the husband could clearly hear him assaulting her. And he would tell them, if one of these plates fall or breaks, I will kill you and everyone else in this house, or I will kill your wife. So they would have to lay there for hours until they thought he was gone, or until he actually killed them. So, as he's attempting to break into this last known victim's home, he's pleading with the officer to not hurt him. And he's saying, "Look, I have my hands up, but because it's dark, in the space where they are, like maybe in her backyard or something, it's dark there. So the officer can't see that he has one of his hands in his pocket retrieving his gun." And while he's telling him, "Look, I have my hands up." So he proceeds to pull out his gun and fire shots at the officer, and then hops over a fence and hightails it up out of there. Luckily, the officer was only shot. The flashlight was only shot. He was not harmed beyond having, they said something like a splinter or something in his eye, but he was not killed, or he was not shot at that time. So again, he gets away. So now he's eluding the police for all these years, and the police are beginning to believe he has to have some type of law enforcement background. Like, there's no way he can keep getting away, escaping like this. He even called into the police department one time and said that you're stupid, and not in those words, but basically you're stupid, and there will be a attack on such and such street. And he showed up. He showed up on like a bike, and the officers were out there waiting for him, and they still didn't catch him. He got away. Why would you call the police department to let them know that you're about to commit this crime and show up knowing that they would be there, only to have them chase you about so you can get away? It's kind of like, I believe that the fact that he could instill fear in the community and that he could instill fear in his victims was like pleasing to him, was one of his greatest pleasures. Like, he really got off on that. So from that point, they like I said, he eluded the authorities for over 40 years. And at some point, they had to realize he had some type of connection or some type of inside knowledge that kept allowing him to get away and go untraced. not necessarily untraced because they were able to trace him, but to get away with all these crimes all this time. It's crazy that he was able to do this. So come to find out, he actually did have law enforcement background. Okay? Not only did he have a background in law enforcement, but he also served in the Army Air Force as well. So he had a history of this, and they knew that it was quite possible that he had this military history because another known moniker he went by was the Diamond Knot Killer. And they chose a diamond knot killer because when he would tie his victims up, he used this rather complicated knot, like a diamond knot. And the knot was so complicated that someone of a military background, a Boy Scout, someone had to have professional knowledge of how to do that. Okay?